In the Phantom Zone, fear has a face. Here's your look at the brand new McFarlane toys. Page Puncher's Ghosts of Krypton Platinum Edition Brainiac. Haunted by the vision of a spectral General Zod seeking salvation, Superman embarks on a perilous journey into the Phantom Zone, where Kal-El discovers an army of deadly Brainiac drones. Superman soon learns that Val-Zod, the Superman of Earth 2, has also been lured to the zone by ghosts from the past. Although powerless in the Phantom Zone, the Men of Steel donning protective Kryptonian armor suits vow to vanquish Brainiac and the menacing mechanical army. Who knew a villain from Superman's past could be nightmare fuel in the present? Just before, of course, we get a closer look at the Page Puncher's Ghosts of Krypton Brainiac, which is also the Platinum Edition release. I'd like to thank once again the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample we could have a look at. You are looking at this correctly, by the way. It is using, yes, the same body as the Brainiac drone we've already had a look at. The colors are a little bit decoed differently, not to mention he's also got a nightmare head to him. The figure is going to stand still the same at about 7 inches in height, or Platinum Edition Brainiac is 18 centimeters tall. Brainiac not only is a Platinum Edition release, but he's also the 5th figure we've looked at so far. By the way, here's that comparison I promised. Here's what the figure looks like along with the regular Brainiac drone. Same bodies, yes. Different head sculpts, sure. And also a completely different, darker deco gets treated to the Platinum Edition Brainiac. Speaking, though, of Platinum Editions, we can also as well bring in the armored version of Val-Zod, which in this case was actually pretty much just a carbon copy of the regular version of Val-Zod, just with different armor over top of his body. We also sort of started these reviews with obviously the Man of Steel, so here's what the figure looks like with that as well. Packing the same things as the earlier looked at Brainiac means that this Brainiac also comes included with the exact same mini comic, 4 of Ghosts of Krypton. If you don't know which comic that you're actually getting with your figure, you just simply have to look on the back of the clamshell. Trying to guess this whole time as to which comic came included with which figure, and which figure had issue number 2. Obviously, I could have easily just looked on the back of the clamshell. Issue, by the way, 4 of 4 kind of does wrap up the story here. And then, obviously, if we get to the very end of things, I don't want to give anything really all the way, but basically just ends in happy both Superman and Val-Zod flying away in their respected cities. It's also an advertisement here on the back there for the Riddler Puzzler box. I did actually have a look at the puzzle box here on this channel. If you want to see how it was solved, check out my video. There's also as well advertisements for the Page Puncher's Aquaman wave. I've looked at that, and I've also looked at partially the Fight the Frozen Page Puncher figures, where we looked at both Batman and a couple of variations of Mr. Freeze. Love that Mr. Freeze. Let's move that comic, though, out of the way. Because it's also using the same comic, it means that they're also using the same trading card. The trading card has been seen already when we looked at, obviously, the Brainiac drone. Nothing changes here this time around. The read-up is going to be exactly the same on the back, with his real name, by the way, featured as Vril Dox. The paragraph read, you can, sure enough, obviously you can pause and read this for yourself. I happen to beat you to it, though. I did read this at the beginning of this review. In fact, actually, I've read this very same read-up with every version, every review of the Ghosts of Krypton. I've read the exact same read-up. Kind of tired of reading it by now. The figure also comes included with the same display stand. I mean, obviously, this goes without saying that many DC multiverse figures all tend to come included with a display stand, other than maybe flight stands. But you'll always see this regularly here on this channel. Let's move that off to the side. The figure also, like I said, comes included with all the additional arms and appendages that would have came with the regular drone version of Brainiac. I'm going to kind of place these a little bit differently than what I did with the drone. For starters, he actually comes included with a couple of tentacle arms. These, by the way, don't have any additional wire built into them, so there's no posability at all in play. But they're nicely little molded pieces. What I did do, though, if I can actually just move Brainiac over and bring back in the drone. Where's the drone? There's the drone right there. I kind of just sort of haphazardly kind of just threw things all on the back of the body. By the way, any one of these, by the way, do have the exact same pegs on the bottom. So you can, if you're looking at the back of Brainiac, he has 5 places to put things. And you can choose for yourself, really, anywhere that these go. I mean, you want to have them down below, you can certainly do that. What I actually like to do, though, with Brainiac, a little bit different than what I did with the drone, is I kind of like to take the tentacle pieces and I like to angle them back. I think it sort of gives him more of a kind of sinister look, especially kind of continuing on the trend that he has all these extra little pieces sticking up in the back of his head. These all little cool little plug. I know, creepy looking head. I kind of like to have the kind of the tentacles arched back like this. Kind of gives him sort of a demonic, devilish look. From there, you can also, he gets this adjustable piece. Now, when we looked at this with the drone, there was no posability that I could actually see. I think what the problem with it was that, like, this part here doesn't have a hinge. I think I may have even mentioned in the review of the drone that this part did articulate. If I didn't, I'm mentioning it now. This piece actually does have articulation to it. All the other extra things that he's going to go on the back of the figure's body doesn't have any posability to it. It's only really this arm. So let's, for example, let's take the arm out. I had it initially, I think, over here, because I did kind of want to keep the smaller arms down below on his lower end of his torso. And that, again, you can wrap this around because, again, this is the only part that has posability. Kind of wish, though, in a way, just before we kind of move further with anything else, I do kind of wish that they could have used a black hingeable peg as opposed to gray. Just because there's so much other black going on in the back of the figure's body. I think by just breaking it up with the gray, it doesn't keep the things consistent. I think I would have rather black instead. Then the figure also comes included with these tiny little arms. One is a little grabbing, pincing arm, and the other one, I made the joke before when we looked at the drone, that looks like the little tiny butler hand and arm from Scary Movie 2. Love Scary Movie 2. Scary Movie 1 and Scary Movie 2 are about the only scary movies I actually do like. All the other ones after that I think are just garbage. Anyways, let's go ahead and take the tiny little arm, dipping inside the mashed potatoes with the gravy. Anyways, we're just going to plug this in place. You could really have this anywhere. I mean, really, if you wanted to have it up here, you could. But again, it kind of looks like a little cat cleaning itself, licking the paws, and then cleaning its face. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Now, what we're going to do, that's silly. What we're going to do is we're going to plug it into the bottom here. And then there's only one other hole. So, I mean, we know right away where this is going to be going. That's just going to plug on the other side. So again, like while all of these, by the way, do rotate something just because it's a peg going into a hole, the only thing that actually does have proper posability is this arm here. But again, I wish it was black, not the gray that we're getting right here. There is still gray, though, on the figure's body, and that's not a bad thing at all. First of all, going back to the head sculpt here, I guess we probably could move the drone out of the way just so the camera's not competing. The head sculpt, though, for Brainiac here, I keep wanting to call this the green goblin. Just because looking at this, it reminds me of Sam Raimi's original concept idea for a fully animatronic Green Goblin. Speaking of nightmare fuel, if you've never got the chance to look that up, look it up. Sam Raimi's Green Goblin. It's probably the first thing that's popping up on YouTube. It's basically an animatronic version of the mask that they eventually abandoned. I think they thought they deemed it too scary for kids, so they instead they went with the Power Rangers mask instead. I think this is a cool looking face for Brainiac. Still has the thing that Brainiac is known for, the little dots there on top of his head. I love the way they've outlined the areas of his eyes, not only in the black, but also the pink as well. Just cool looking teeth. Just a sinister looking face. Just the thing that nightmares are made of. Now, it's the only part other than that and the hands that actually have green on his body. Because, again, they're using the exact same body as the drone we looked at before. What they've done, instead of actually coloring this all or molding this all in the silver plastic, as you can see here with the drone, they've molded it instead in black plastic. There's still, of course, the gray here. The gray is represented here on all the things that are hingeable. I kind of have to feel like, I wonder how this would have looked if this was all black instead of gray. In the actual comic, we do see this version of Brainiac, although I think it's slightly different than what we're actually getting here with the figure. I mean, obviously, to get the most out of their mold, it'd just be the easiest thing for the company just to use the mold that we've got already for the drone, and then just mold it differently here for the Platinum Edition Brainiac. So, really cool looking figure, but yeah, there are a few little things I probably would have done a little bit different, like the gray here on his elbows. Whether that's comic accurate or not, I kind of like the idea if they had done that in black instead, just keeping everything really, really dark in this guy. He still has some nice additional silver there, almost like a chrome silver on the front of his body. Some notable accented areas there in purple or kind of a very light pink. And then he's also got like kind of those stilted feet that the original Brainiac drone would have been also on this figure as well. But, you know, even though I think I like the drone a little bit more, there's something to be said, though, about Brainiac's face this time around that just is absolutely terrifying. By the way, though, speaking of his head, though, because it is on a ball joint, technically you could pop this head off and you could use it with other figures. In the review of, for example, of the drone, I actually popped the head off of the drone. And just to show you, I could have replaced it with the Infinite Crisis? I think it was Infinite Crisis. The other Brainiac that we did get from before. You could technically pop the head and replace those if you really wanted to. But other than that, like, the body is really pretty much the same. Even the hands really seem to be the same. I mean, if you look at this one and then you look at the hands that he has for the drone, I don't think they've molded them any bit differently. They just simply colored each of the individual digits. Even the piggy that went to the market are all done differently in green. The blade is also something that's similarly shared here as well. It's obviously here molded in black, but they didn't simply just mold though in black. They also added a little wash there of additional silver. I like the look of that as well. Yeah, it's a nice looking figure. I think I still like the drone just a little bit more, but I really like that they used the mold smartly by giving us a Brainiac as well. Now, for the figure's articulation, it's going to be all still the same retained articulation as the drone. So the head's going to rotate all the way around. The head is going to look this far down, this far up. You can also move it, of course, back and forth as well. Now, any one of these additional appendages on the back of his body, because they peg in place, any one of these could be considered posability. Those rotate. These on the back obviously rotate there as well. Really, again, like the idea of having the tentacles back like this. It just looks like demon horns. This also rotates back and forth. This is the one thing that does actually rotate back and forth or hinge back and forth. Upper torso is going to be on, again, a ball joint, but the ball joint isn't in a place where you'd expect it to be. You would probably think it'd be like right around here, right? But the ball joint is actually further down. And even by being it further down, because he's got so much backpack on the back of his body, you can only hinge the body back as far as this. You can certainly crunch it further forward, though. So if you want a lumbering-looking Brainiac, you can also do that as well. But he doesn't have a whole lot of posability until you actually bring his torso down. If you have it up like this, you're not going to be able to move the body too much. If you move it down, though, you get a little bit more flexibility with what he can actually pull off. Shoulders, though, do move forward and back. They also hinge outward as well. There's a swivel where this attaches to the shoulder, double hinge on the elbow, and then the hands also rotate all the way around. It doesn't work as much on this side because he's got like a larger Borg-like arm here on the other side of his body, but he does have still the double hinge on the elbow and still the rotation there retained in the bicep. Just nothing really rotates down here. The legs split out. They're on hinge joints. So you can take, of course, the legs, move them forward, move them back. There's a swivel there at the top of the thigh, a double hinge also on the knee, and also for your articulation for the ankle, back and forth goes this way and also rocks back and forth this way as well. Of course, there is the peg holes in the bottoms of his feet. The figure doesn't have any toe articulation for the obvious reasons. It's simply just because, like, he's got tiny, tiny little feet. But cool-looking Brainiac. Cool-looking Brainiac. Don't have a lot of this Brainiac. I mean, I'm thinking of this one, and then again, I'm thinking of, what was it? Infinite Justice. Infinite Justice? I think that was the Brainiac that I was thinking of. There was this one, and then, of course, that figure itself has got a couple of different color variations. It seems to be the case when it comes to Brainiac that instead of getting multiple Brainiacs, like he's not a Joker, for example, that seems to be rewarded with multiple releases of him, Brainiac sort of gets relegated to only like 1 or 2 releases. The Infinite Justice, for example, Brainiac did get recolored, not retooled, recolored in kind of more the classic Super Friends color scheme. This Brainiac, essentially, other than just a retooling of the new head sculpt here, is just basically the drone, colored differently, and it's still a pretty cool looking figure. If really given the choice, if, say, somebody was bending my arm and telling me, I mean, that's an awful way to get somebody to submit. But if you were bending my arm and telling me there was only one figure I had to choose, I probably would still end up ultimately going with the drone. The drone works on many levels. I mean, not only as a drone, as one that you could get multiple copies of and have displayed as a big, massive army, but just as a standalone Brainiac, too. If you like a robotic Brainiac from the old Superpowers Kenner line, that one did the job rather nicely. This Brainiac, though, I like the look of it. I do like that they simply just didn't take the body of this Brainiac, kept the exact same color scheme, and just simply planted on top of the neck a brand new head sculpt. No, they at least colored it darker, colored it differently, giving us a much cooler, much more sinister looking Brainiac that's definitely worth, if I'm not getting my arm bent in an awkward position, it's definitely worth picking up both if you get the chance. Not only is the Ghost of Krypton Brainiac a sick-looking figure, but he's got some decent posability points. Granted, those parts of posability are pretty much placed, not to spit on everybody in front of me, in the same places as regular DC Multiverse figures. Something working with, though, a leaner body like this gives him a little more flexibility than a standard figure would grant you. He does have double hinges in his elbows, double hinges also in his knees. But with the flexibility that he has also in his thighs, you can get some pretty cool poses in him, like I've got displayed right now. The way he's standing right now is probably going to be the way he's going to continue to stand on my shelf, with just the one right now of the Brainiac drone, with probably the promise that I'm going to get more than one of these. I think, though, still I like the Brainiac drone more, but I like the way they approach the Platinum Edition Brainiac, giving him his bright green goblin, almost skinned face that he has, with the additional colors of the chrome also added to his torso. The only thing I don't really like as much is that some of the gray seems a little jarring because it doesn't look as finished, with the majority of his body being black like this. I think it worked almost even better with the Brainiac drone because the majority of his body was kind of more that shinier, kind of dirtied up silver. And then the actual points, the parts that were actually bendable, were more of a matte black. With this kind of being more of a shinier gray, I find the parts that actually bend on this figure to be a little bit more noticeable. Other than that, though, one thing I also really like that McFarlane's done with both of these figure releases is that all the appendages on the back of his body are all universally the same sized peg, which means you can decide for yourself exactly where you want to put it. You want to have Kitten cleaning herself? Well, okay, you can take that tiny little hand and have it more closer to his head. I personally kind of like the idea of taking, though, the tentacles that he has, and arch them back like this so it looks like devil horns, giving him even more creepier look than he already had already. Big thank you once again to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample of the Page Puncher's Ghosts of Krypton Platinum Edition Brainiac that we had the chance to have a look at in this review. As of right now, this is sort of wrapping up the reviews of the Ghosts of Krypton because I still don't have the version, the spiritual version, the spectral version of General Zod. Don't have that figure yet, but when eventually I do, not only will a review come of General Zod, but it will also finally finish the story because I'm still being eluded by issue number 2. If you guys did in the meantime enjoy this video, why not throw it a like? If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and would like to stick around for more, even though right now we may have to put a bit of a hiatus on the Ghosts of Krypton, there is definitely still going to be more DC Multiverse reviews coming your way. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.